Good evening. The topic of our discussion today is leadership. It is hard to imagine human life without leadership. In some sense, the entire history of humanity is the result of good or bad leadership. In terms of concepts that form the basis of the existence of nations, such as identity, values, mission, and vision, leadership is of central importance. Yet in today's world, as well as in our own society, we see a deep crisis of leadership. This is the topic we will talk about today. I would also like to note that today is the Feast of the Holy Translators, an important and special day. I would say probably the most important holiday in terms of our identity. For more than 1,600 years, thanks to the work of these people, we have been able to preserve our identity and values and create a unique, outstanding culture. This is also a vivid example of human cooperation and leadership, a surprisingly long-lasting leadership. And this phenomenon certainly needs to be studied. I would like the spirit of our Holy Translator Fathers to be with us during this discussion today. Now, let me introduce the participants of our discussion. Nubar Efeyan, founder and CEO of Flagship Pioneering, founder and president of the famous company Moderna, someone who has created numerous other companies as well. Nubar is also a very good friend of IPE School and is one of its benefactors. He is our friend and shares IPE's idea and vision. David Yang, he is a co-founder of IPE School and the IPE Educational Foundation, member of the foundation's Board of Trustees, founder of numerous technology companies, including ABBY, ICO, EVA, and many others. Recently, David has been speaking more about his new innovation related to emotional artificial intelligence, and he is now fully engrossed in that idea. Our next participant is Tigran Harutyunyan, one of the benefactors of IPE School, member of the boards of trustees of both the IPE Foundation and the IPE School. Tigran is a businessman, but a doctor by education. He manages one of the largest construction companies in Armenia, Mikshin, and is its founder and CEO. And so the first question I would like to address to our participants is the following. What is leadership? What do we mean by leadership in general? And what is its role in human life? What are leadership models and how do they change over time? Please, Nubar.
So I will speak in English. First, thank you for having me there, Mesrob, and really nice to spend time together. This was a last-minute addition, I think, given that I happen to be in Armenia, and I'm happy to be included in these discussions. For me, leadership, we could look at leadership in many, many different ways. The first question that comes to mind is leading who? And I would say sometimes you're leading yourself, and other times you're leading a team. And what I mean by leading yourself is that if you have to set a goal, get resources to accomplish something, but you're on your own, that's one kind of leadership. You're leading an activity that you're undertaking. Much harder is when you have to lead independent humans who have their own ideas and their own approaches, and that becomes much more complicated form of leadership. I think that leaders and followers, if you will, in a team setting, are the actors in the play, if you will. And we talk a lot about what leads to effective leadership. Is it the upfront part of planning and setting a destination? Is it coming up with the right trade-offs in choosing a direction? Is it adjusting to the various forces that might cause you to change your destination or your direction? Is it getting people inspired to follow your leadership, to want to take, often there's risks in doing especially novel things such as what many of us have dealt with. And so, and the answer is yes. And the answer is all of the above and more. Often, depending on where you are headed, leadership also involves inspiring people to take risks that they otherwise don't really want to take. And sometimes we say you lead by example, you lead by your own kind of conviction and courage. So you need to be able to transmit some of these things that are moving you. But as well, leadership is very often all about listening, because among the best ways to gain alignment with a team is to allow them to express their views of where such a team may need to go, and then integrate that into your thinking, but above all, use that in order to gain the kind of buy-in to achieve alignment. We'll talk more about alignment, but for me, among the biggest roles of a leader is to achieve and maintain alignment. The more the uncertainty in what you're doing, the more the dynamics of what you're doing, the more when you lose alignment, that's where a team fails. And so that is often the extra role of a leader. I think of it a little like a conductor, where even if you don't make a single sound in an orchestra, a conductor plays an extremely important role. That's an archetypical role of a leader. There's many others, but since we only have 3 minutes per answer, I think I used up most of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nubar. David, please, I recently watched your TED Talk on leadership, and I believe you have something to say on this matter. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Father Misrop. I don't know, I can't have any explanations. How did you guys in Moderna did it? I mean, leadership for me, I thought I know something, but making possible to produce vaccine in so short term and make it in production in that large scale, for me is still magic, and I would spend only this meeting only to discuss this, how it happened. But anyway, thank you. Thank you from hundreds of millions of people in the world, if not billions. Well, about the leadership, I made a TEDx talk because for several years I was involved in understanding how does it work, how leadership works from data science point of view. I'm a physicist by training, and I don't trust words. I trust arguments, data, proofs, etc. So yes, we had a question. As Father Mesrop mentioned, I started several companies, and I wanted to understand whether it was just sheer luck if we did something right, or we actually can repeat it and we have something real. And finally, we came up with understanding that there are 5 leadership styles. And those 5 leadership styles, we call them informal leadership styles, actually related to Mother Nature, to our neurochemistry. First leadership style we call dominance. It related to dopamine, to testosterone. It's pushy and determined style of informal leadership. Next one is, we call it innovation. It related to dopamine. It's novelty-seeking, risk-taking element. Third one related with oxytocin. It's team building skills. It's informal leadership, ability to influence others by hugging them, by combining. And Nubar mentioned that. The fourth one is called, we call it protection. It's somehow related to serotonin. Protectors are people who build rules, who follow rules, and who push other people to follow use rules. And the fifth one is expertise. Those people influence others by professional excellence. They affect others by their professionalism. So 5 leadership styles we found in data, in collaboration data. And interestingly that when I learned that actually it's somehow related to our neurobiology, I made just a hypothesis that it means it should be also found in other animals. And I was exactly right. If you know bees, they have working bees and scout bees. And working bees and scout bees are exactly similar animals, but scout bees have different dopamine reward system. So they break rules. They seek for novelty. They take risks, and because of that, the swarm actually finally survives. However, according to MIT professor Alex Pentland, he also reviewed that informal leadership in long-term success. And he found that only harmonious combination between that type of styles together leads to long-term business success. It's long-term studies based on millions of data points. So he actually named that phenomena. He called it collective intelligence. So actually the bee swarm also has collective intelligence, because when the scout bees bring this information about new source, they actually distribute that information internally and make collective decision. So referring to the topic of this today's panel, in my opinion now, I literally see people expressing different types of traits, and I'm trying to put together people of different traits to get this collective intelligence. I know the time is gone, but last example how it works. For example, Steve Jobs is very prominent, dominant innovator. He broke all rules and he was very pushy. However, he was less careful of people, and he was was able to create standards. However, Tim Cook was prominent protector integrator. So because of him, the major team of New Apple after 1997, 1998, actually were able to make this possible, scalable, very, very high quality products. So this foundation I would like to also share, and thank you.
Շնորհակալություն Դավիթ։
Thank you, David. The floor is yours, Tigran. Please. Thank you, Father Mesrop. Also, thank you for your kind invitation. First of all, I would like to say that I fully agree with the ideas expressed by the other speakers, and I would like to note something that, in my opinion, is very important. It is the difference between a manager and a leader. That is, when we say manager and when we say leader, for me, they are two different concepts. Someone could be a manager by virtue of his position, but fail to be a leader. Nations or larger groups as well as smaller groups or organizations who need protection or self-organization, must have a manager so that the group can act according to some rules. And one of the key duties of a manager is to ensure observation of regulations. Yet leadership is not just about one's abilities. I would agree with Mr. Afeyan's idea of value-based leadership. That is, the leader should lead by own example. And leading people is possible when there's a destination and a bigger goal. The word leadership has the root lead, so a goal, a meta idea is mandatory for leadership here. Simply security or other needs are not sufficient for it, which is why I would also like to highlight the difference between a manager and a leader from that perspective. A manager can be appointed or selected, yet in order to become a leader, I believe more effort should be exerted. Thank you, Tigran. You have indeed come close to my second question, which is about the qualities of a leader. What should a leader be like? And it is very important that you have once again emphasized the idea that leadership is based on values. So in that sense, it is something of a spiritual nature. Of course, it is also about biology, chemistry, chemical processes, volitional qualities, etc. But it is, in my view, a very deep spiritual and transformative phenomenon. So what qualities or values should a leader have? What do you think are the most important qualities and values? And generally, how to shape leaders? And since we are not talking about merely personal leadership, as both individuals and groups can lead, I would like to also discuss the role of the elite in forming the leadership culture in general. Please, Nubar.
Look, I think when I think about leadership over the years, I've come to view that the most important concept is balance. And again, I'm talking about the kind of leadership I've experienced, which is the innovation type leadership that David mentioned, which also encompasses the other types, but where there is an element of uncertainty, there's an element of just rapid change, turbulence, that type leadership in that phase is what I have more experience with. So my comments are more drawn from that. And so why do I say balance? I think balance is kind of the combination of extremes. So for example, to be a leader, you often have to be action-oriented or urgency-oriented, but you have to be patient. And you might say, how could you do that? Right? You have to be overconfident and afraid at the same time. You have to be extremely optimistic, given what you're doing is probably not going to work, but extremely paranoid. I call that paranoid optimism. You have to be arrogant in your determination, so people go, oh, look at this person, thinks they can do this, but you have to be humble. I can go on and on and on. What you don't want to be is between those two things. Because between those two things, you actually can't move people because you're yourself a compromise. So you need to be able to toggle between the two things. If you drive, you look at the horizon, you look right in front of the car. Then you look at the horizon, you look once in a while you look backwards. You don't just do all three in an average ensemble way, you do it in a toggled way. So that's one concept I would leave. And another thing you have to do, there's also this issue of transparency and kind of discretion, because somewhat you want to be super open, and people will sometimes argue that you only want to be that way, but there are other places where that opening absolutely creates chaos, and so you have to be careful when is what needed. At the end of the day, if you tend to the extremes, you will fail, but I would argue if you're also in the middle, not a combination of the two extremes, you're also going to fail. So those are just some concepts that I would say if you find yourself being behaviorally schizophrenic, it's okay. A lot of people think that that's inconsistency, but I don't think that that's actually inconsistency. David, as a physicist, will explain to us that's kind of some form of quantum behavior, I'm sure. But now we have Nobel Prizes, that's new, so we can think of it that way. But I really do think you can be at the same time afraid and overconfident. These are not dichotomies, that's my view. In terms of the last part you threw in there, Mesrub?
Մեկը նաև ինչպես պատրաստել այդպիսի մարդկանց, որ շատ կարևոր հարց է.
The responsibility of elite. That's what you were saying. Okay. So responsibility of the elite. I mean, I think elite is a tough word, so I don't really want to go there, but I would say there's the expression, with power comes responsibility. Leadership is actually, in part, the assumption of a power of incrementally a role that isn't what everyone is playing. So you're given that power, but with it comes a responsibility of actually taking care of that power so that you achieve an objective. So people are somewhat giving of themselves. If you're, for example, in a military unit, right, the leader of a military unit has an extra responsibility towards the soldiers, not only vis-a-vis protection, but also making sure that you're not improvising, you're not, winging it because you're playing with people's lives. Similarly, in surgery, in a surgical unit, so you can go every single place, and you realize this notion of the coupling between the power and the responsibility of leaders, very, very serious. It's often leaders are said to be, especially CEOs of companies, and it's a very, very lonely job. But in reality, if you make peace with the fact that you're acting on behalf of the rest of the team, and that you're either chosen or assigned or nobody wanted to do it, that role, well then that makes it less of a lonely job because you're actually acting on their behalf. So it's a representative role as well. Just some thoughts, I don't want to, I'm sure.
David.
Yes, I like this balance between two extremes, and having two extremes simultaneously, I never thought about it, but I probably would agree. If I would say continue my paradigm I suggested, many of you might ask, and you, Father Mesrop, okay, if it's a neurobiological kind of nature of person, about being innovator, dopamine rule-breaking person, what can you do with that? And if you don't have this protection, this process building kind of inner situation, we all knew, we all see us, right? Some people Sunday want to actually enjoy and feel happy to put all plates in the kitchen, put all instruments in the garage in order, clean, and it's just in order. This is happiness. Other people feel happy just going to the mountains and taking risks and extreme sports. So two different ways. So what to do? I would say the quality of an actual leader is to understand, first, objectively understand what is my inner excellence. I mean, where I feel happy and what is missing, what traits are missing. And to surround myself with people who are adding that which is missing. So, for example, Walter Fallon, Kodak CEO, we know all that story when in 1975, I guess, people brought, and he didn't want to go there. And sometime later, the company almost disappeared. So not being able, he was very dominant. I read a book about Walter Fallon, and what I can read, he was very dominant, pushy, strong manager, strong, pushy, determined manager, and very, very structural. He built fantastic operations, but I guess he was lacking innovation part, breaking rules part. But what was also lacking, he couldn't understand he must surround himself with people who actually bringing these innovations and breaking rules. So that's part, we can exchange expression of leadership in the group of people by putting together people of different traits. And this is first way. And second way, actually, our brain is still can change. Neuroplasticity is ability to actually change our traits. So if I don't want to put something in order, I need to know that it's my kind of missing point. So I just need to go out of my comfort zone and do it little by little. At some point, I will start loving this. So two ways to make this collective intelligence in the group of people. And for me now, it's a practical way to improve business efficiency.
Շնորհակալություն Դավիթ։
Thank you. David, Tigran, what would you say?
Yes.
I will say once again that I completely agree with the ideas expressed by the other speakers. And yes, just as you don't need a general without soldiers, in the same way you don't need a leader without followers. Having one without the other has no meaning. The two need to work together. In my belief, the most important quality for a leader is the responsibility. No one needs a leader or a manager who does not take responsibility where the team has made a mistake or made a wrong decision or has failed. The leader is, above all, someone who is action-oriented. And as has been mentioned, one of the key features in forming a team is to assume the responsibility where the team has failed in the process of formation or where any team member has made a mistake. When it comes to how to educate or develop leaders, I believe that the first most important quality of a leader is to motivate people to work. That is to encourage action as much as possible. Because no one needs a leader who constantly hesitates and does not act. Very good. So to sum up these two questions, I would like to add that, of course, my questions presuppose certain expectations, and I believe that these expectations do exist in our society. We seek models of public leadership. We will address this in our final question. But a little while ago, I mentioned the example of the Holy Translators movement. Of course, this movement had great founders, Saint Mesop Mashtots and Saint Sahak Bartev. But just imagine, this movement has had a unique role in our life for more than 1,600 years. I do not know of a more brilliant example of a shared leadership that would be able to survive for so long and produce results. Of course, this was buttressed by a very strong education system, one of the best, actually. They took the best, adapted it, and created our own system. And we see a truly unique example. It seems that now, too, people are looking for other such interesting examples. As leadership models are changing, human consciousness has changed, and we are seeking new forms, because the old ways, the classic, outdated ways, no longer work. People think differently and live in a different cultural world. And all of this should be considered. I believe that the holy translators have set us a good example, and we can learn from it. Now, I would like us to address the questions from the internet and from the audience. Please. If in any team or society the manager is not a leader, or the manager is someone and the leader is someone else, what consequences can this have?
I don't know. I'm a very believer of teamwork and about backside leadership. There is a controversial theory that if you see this wolf staya, it's a group of wolves, pack. The most experienced, wolf is going in the end. There are some say that it's not right. It's not exactly right, but anyway, at least it's a beautiful example. Backside leadership, when actually the leader is putting some people in forward to allow them to make mistakes, actually, and ability in giving the right for mistake. In Silicon Valley, they don't say don't fail. It's impossible. Every innovation process is actually process of failing. It's a proof of hypothesis in physics. What physicists are doing, actually they proving, generating hypotheses and proving them or disproving. In Silicon Valley they say fail fast. They don't say don't fail. It's impossible. They say just fail fast. So allowing your team members to fail, it's an important element to move forward. It might not be exactly right for politics. I don't know. I'm not a politician, so I'm not sure exactly how that could be translated that. But at least in technological innovations and innovative process, this is just this is a law. So.
Yeah, I'll just add that I think in the way the question was formulated, there's the assumption that somebody's in charge and there's somebody else who is either a more capable leader or who is actually leading. But usually you can only lead if you're not in charge by the leader, by the person in charge appointing you to lead or asking you to lead, or even more complicated, if you lead by making the person in charge look better and you feed them what the goal should be, how to get the team on board, and so you are playing the role of a substitute leader, but under the power of the person in charge. And those situations happen and they work. In fact, a leader in charge who fails to make the person in charge successful isn't a leader. Right off the bat, they're a failed leader. Because your responsibility, if you're not in charge, is to make sure the team succeeds. And to do that, you have to mention earlier, if you have certain skills of breaking rules, etc., and somebody else has a good organizational skill, how do you bring them together? So I would say the reason I said revolution is that if you actually don't have those two forces working together, the leader who's not in charge will fail, and the person in charge will also likely fail. That's what I would expect.
I can say instead what cannot happen in that case. A great success cannot happen if the manager and the person who is a leader do not play a team game. And given the context of the question, I deduce that if the situation is like this, then they won't have a lot of success. What can happen, in my view, is variable, ranging from the worst failure to revolution, the dissolution of the organization, etc., but they will definitely not have much success. Thank you. We have now approached our final question. I would like us to discuss the problem of leadership crisis. How to overcome this crisis that is everywhere. We see that the world is in a very chaotic state. There's a great manipulative influence on human consciousness. Some philosophers call this period a value flood. Others call this the post-truth era. In other words, the truth is no longer important. You can tell lies all day long, and many people will admire and follow you. These are the times we live in. The entire wisdom, culture of thinking, and so on, accumulated by humanity have been put aside, and I think the humanity is in a very perilous situation. We also see its disastrous consequences in the Armenian reality. I would like us to focus on public leadership. This type of leadership differs from that of the selected people with certain qualities who are in the same value field. Probably the most difficult thing is to select a leadership type that will be acceptable to everyone. Public leadership is really a big headache. I'd like to understand which model of public leadership is more efficient in this modern world, according to our speakers. And if it is to be applied in any national culture, how it should correspond to the identity, values, psychology, etc., of a nation, because these are also important issues. We can take a very good model, but applying it may not bring any tangible results. Please, Nubat, we would like to hear from you.
I would say a couple of things. First of all, the current environment we're in, more than the past period, although I just turned 60, and every time I look at where we are, I keep thinking it's more this, it's more that than ever. And I'm always worried because it just feels like that given the moment you live in. But despite that, I really do think we are living in more troubled, turbulent, uncertain times than certainly I've ever lived in, by a long shot. At every level, local, country, world, science, economics, you name it, social, everything is in a high degree of turbulence. And that's, by the way, a natural process. If you look at it from an evolutionary standpoint, there are periods of time where there's relative constancy, not a lot of innovation in nature. And then there's periods of time where there's intense competition, resource lacks, and massive innovations, and new species being born, worse yet, many being extinct. We seem to be in that type of time frame. And I do believe that the answer for what we're in will be found through the experiment, which is which leadership style works, which philosophical approach works, is going to be, which alliances work, is going to be a function of actually the ones that survive. Because we are in a survivalistic period. I don't think that philosophers will be able to, I believe, predict which ones will, because there's too much change in the conditions. The problem people don't understand in evolution is that it's selection of the fittest then available, which dictates the selection pressure, because selection reflects the nature that's selecting. So there's a constant dynamic, and in this period there's a massive dynamic going on. So why do I say all that? I think I'm bringing it down to a level of an elected leader. I think that when you're talking about leading just the populace, one of the important traits in my view, and this may surprise you or the audience, is the humility of realizing that you actually don't know what to do, right? In massive fog, in massive uncertainty, the crazy leader pretends they know what to do. In my view, a more rational leader actually exposes the fact that they don't know exactly what to do, and they share how they're thinking about it. There are 2 or 3 different approaches we could use. I prefer this one for this reason, let's try it, but then we might change it in a minute. And that level of transparency, I think, makes you a better leader. Most leaders think that they have to pretend that they know what to do. When I first came to Armenia, I learned the often used Armenian word kidem, right? If you're a leader, I'd rather you say chkidem openly to your people. I don't know. Now, how you say that with confidence and people still follow you is a really important skill. And I'd say, coming to political leadership, how you say I don't know, because you certainly don't know. That experiment's never been run. That country's never been in that situation. The world has never been full of lies. The world has not seen pandemics for 100 years. The conceit, the hubris of I know, because I'm a leader, I know. It's like, it's kind of that kind of axiom is completely faulty in my view. But then you might say, why would people follow you? And so you're leading them in figuring it out. And I think that political leadership, in my view today, is not about knowing the answer. It's about using the collective intelligence, as David said, or the collective mind, to determine the best path forward. And you need to be able to collect that, have a process of seeing what is the most meritorious approach, and then selling it hard and constantly adjusting as needed. So this may sound weird, but when it comes to large groups, etc., particularly in my view, public leadership, I'd prefer a person who looks at the solutions in the people and in people's minds than professes the leadership. That the answer. That type of top-down leadership in the face of massive uncertainty is, in my view, a lottery game. I'd rather we discover the right approach and the right destination, not assert it, because there's too many unknowns. So that's my only reaction to this. That vulnerability of a leader is perfectly fine. People don't expect you to know. They expect you to help them figure it out, and the answer may be in the audience.
Շնորհակալություն, Նուբար։
Thank you, Nubar. David?
I don't know the answer. And
I don't even know that.
what I would like to just raise and allow everyone to think about, to read, is everything is changing in this world in terms of sharing not only goods, physical goods, but most importantly sharing information and sharing knowledge, sharing feelings. We are becoming a giant new organism. It was cells, there were cells, now they became simple organisms, then very complex organisms like humans, for example. Now humanity becomes a new organism because it's connected with billions of these connections in Instagram, in Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, and emails. We are all connected today. We are a big organism. So maybe that will introduce completely new ways of leadership, which will somehow utilize, say, something like collective intelligence without actual leadership. Maybe we are witnessing right now what is happening in surrounding countries. That type of leadership is the last resort. It's the final, end of life of that type of leadership. Maybe we will see completely new digital type of leadership. Also, influence of artificial intelligence to everyday's life is so dramatic. I would not be surprised that in 40, 50 years, we actually will live together with, yes, emotional companions, AI companions who will vote. Yes, they will. Robots' lives matter. I guarantee you will happen in not later than in 15 years. And it will be a new humanity, new biological plus organic, not organic together humanity, and it will be collective ways to make decisions, to make our life better, etc. So I don't know the answer, but I'm saying we probably are witnessing significant changes.
Ես կասեմ
A great politician once said that good politicians must know what will happen in a week. Then they must know what will happen in a month, then they must know what will happen in a year, and then they must really eloquently explain why all of this has not happened. If we are talking about political leadership, I think that the very first response lies in the followers. Because there's a big difference between leading a certain group of people, a nation, country, or some other group that has a specific social status, and leading a highly technologically equipped and advanced country or a society. In my view, it heavily depends on the values of people, on what they really value. We come back to what I have already said, that for me, the first and most important condition for leadership is the presence of values and the presence of a bigger goal that everyone strives for and that everyone wants to achieve. For building a good team, I think, it is necessary, I believe, to have followers who want to be, the part of that big idea, want to be part of that big goal. And such followers would usually select a leader who would lead them to that goal. Thank you, Tigran. So, leaders cannot do anything without the agreement of their followers. And in some sense, it is probably justified that every nation has the leader it deserves. Because there's the question of responsibilities, and responsibilities are not taken by the leader alone. In other words, people too take the responsibility and share it. Thank you for this discussion. What Nubat has said brought up an image from the Bible to my mind. Nubat said that it is very important for leaders not to constantly say that they know it all, but instead to say, I don't know, and we will try to find out together. Or, who am I to lead you? This image is that of Moses, when God appeared to him and said, Go and bring my people out of Egypt. Moses said, My Lord, who am I to go and take them out? I have no power. How can I represent you? God said, Cast that rod on the ground. Moses did as God told him, and it became a serpent. God said, Put forth your hand and take it by the tail. And it became a rod again. God said, This is so that they may believe that you represent me. And Moses said, Oh my Lord, I'm not eloquent, slow of speech and slow of tongue. God said, Is not Aaron the Levite your brother? I know that he can speak well. And so began the great story, their exodus from Egypt. And Moses showed that a truly dedicated leader should be like. But I would like to note here that that man doubted himself a lot. He was very humble indeed. Yet, in that humility, he also accepted the challenge. And for me, it is the final part that matters a lot. He says he doesn't know how to speak well, so the phenomenon of speaking is delegated to another person. For me, this means that one should not be fooled by nice words, by those who speak beautifully. One should instead look at their deeds. Look at people's inner intentions. Look at people's values, because they are much more important. Very often, in this era especially, much more attention is paid to how good or beautiful the spoken word was, even with consequences that were disastrous. In any case, the Holy Scripture and the history of humanity in general give us very powerful examples of truly great leaders. And, of course, for me, the greatest example of leadership is our Lord Jesus Christ. The way he chose those humble people, the apostles, who were fishing, he said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And those apostles changed the world. Two of them, Paul and Peter, conquered the invincible Roman Empire. No one could have thought that that empire could ever be conquered. Yet those humble people, filled with inner spiritual light, loving and serving people infinitely, show the greatest example of how leaders should be. And may God make that light also rise in us and in humanity. I hope today we have heard very interesting ideas and thoughts. I would like to thank all our speakers, and I wish you a beautiful evening.